Wisteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Legends of Britany. We're now on the new section, which I've called is the kind of like the world tales in Britanny. So they are quite old, so they'll be very different, I would imagine. The first one is called The Youth Who Did Not Know. One day the Marquis of Court Scorio was returning from Morlaix when he beheld, lying on the road, a little fellow of 4 or 5 years of age. He leapt from his horse, picked up the child, and asked him what he did there. "I do not know," replied the little boy. "Who is your father?" asked the Marquis. "I do not know," said the child for the second time. "And your mother?" asked the kindly nobleman. "I do not know." "Where are you now, my child?" "I do not know." "Then what is your name?" "I do not know." The Marquis told his serving man to place the child on the crupper of his horse, as he had taken a fancy to him and would adopt him. He called him Noa un doa, which signifies in Breton, "I do not know." He educated him, and when his schooling was finished, took him to Morlaix, where they put up at the best inn in town. Means that's where they put him in, that's where he was staying. The Marquis could not help admiring his adopted son, who had now grown into a tall, handsome youth, and so pleased was he with him that he desired to signify his approval by making him a little present, which he resolved should take the form of a sword. So they went out into the town and visited the armourers' shops in search of a suitable weapon. They saw swords of all kinds, but Naundoe would have none of them, until at last they passed the booth of a seller of scrap metal, where hung a rusty old rapier, which seemed fit for nothing. "Ha!" cried Naundoe. "That is the sword for me. Please buy it, I beg of you." "Why, don't you see what condition it is in?" said Marquis. "It is not a fit weapon for a gentleman." "Nevertheless, it is the only sword I wish for," said Noundoy. Well, you are a strange fellow," said the Marquis. But he bought the sword nevertheless, and they returned to court. Squirrel the next day. Naundoy examined the sword, and discovered that the blade had the words, "I am invincible," engraved upon it. Some time afterward, the Marquis said to him, "It is time that you had a horse. Come with me to Morlaix, and we will purchase one." They accordingly set out for Morlaix. In the marketplace they saw many fine animals, but with none of them was Naundoy content. On returning to the inn, however, he espied what looked like a broken-down mare standing by the roadside, and to this sorry beast he immediately drew his attention of the Marquis. "That is the horse for me," he cried. "I beg of you, purchase it for me." "What?" cried the Marquis. "That broken-down beast? Why, only look at it, my son." But Noendoer persisted, and at last, despite his own better judgment, the Marquis bought the animal. The man who sold it was a cunning-looking fellow from Cornouailles, who, as he put the bridle into Noendoer's hand, whispered, "You see the knots on the altar of this animal?" "Yes," replied Noendoer. "What of them?" "Only this. Each time you loosen one, the mare will immediately carry you 500 leagues from where you are." The Marquis and his ward returned once to the chateau, Naundoer riding his new purchase, when it entered into his head to untie one of the knots on the altar. He did so, and immediately descended into the middle of Paris, which we must take the storyteller's word for it. I mean, it's 500 leagues from Brittany. Several months afterwards, the Marquis had occasion to go to Paris, and one of the first people he met there was Noundoye, who told him of his adventure. The Marquis was going to visit the king and took his protege along with him to the palace, where he was well received. Some nights afterwards, the youth was walking with his old mare outside the walls of Paris and noticed something which glittered very brightly at the floor of an ancient stone cross, which stood where four roads met, so a crossroads. He approached it and beheld a crown of gold, set in the most brilliant precious stones. He at once picked it up, when the old mare, turning its head, said to him, "Take care, you will repent this." Greatly surprised, Awundue thought that he had better replace the crown, but a longing to possess it overcame him, and although the mare warned him once more, he finally resolved to take it, and putting it under his mantle, rode away. Now the king had confided to care part of the royal stables, and when Awundue entered them, their darkness was immediately lit up by radiance of the crown which he carried. So well had the Breton lad attended to the horses under his charge, that the other squires had become jealous, and observing the strange light in the Wonderware's part of the stable, they mentioned it to the king, who in turn spoke of it to Marquis of Courtsquero. The Marquis asked No Wonderware the meaning of the light, and the youth replied that it came from the ancient sword they had bought at Molaire, which was an enchanted weapon and shone at intervals with strange brilliance. But one night his enemies resolved to examine into the matter more closely, and looking through the keyhole of the stable, they saw the wondrous light which had puzzled them shone from the magnificent crown of gold. They ran at once to tell the king, and next night, knowing the stable was opened with a keymaster key, and the crown removed to the king's quarters. It was then seen that an inscription was engraved upon the diadem, but in such strange characters no one could read it. The magicians of the capitals were called in consultation, but none of them could decipher the writing. At last, a little boy of 7 years of age was found, who said that it was the crown of the Princess Goblin Belle. The Golden Bell. The king then called upon Nouandoin to approach, and said to him, "You should not have hidden this thing from me, but as you are guilty of having done so, I doom you to find the Princess Golden Bell, whom I desire shall become my wife. If you fail, I shall put you to death." Nouandoin left the royal presence in a very perturbed state of mind. He went to seek his old mare with tears in his eyes. "I know," said the mare, "the cause of your sorrow. You should have left that golden crown alone. I told you, but do not repine. Go to the king and ask him for money for your journey." The lad received the money from the king and set out on his journey. Arriving at the seashore, one of the first objects he beheld was a little fish cast upon the waves on the beach, and almost at its last gap it was, gasping and thrashing there. "Throw that fish back into the waters," said the mare. Nouandoin did so, and the fish, lifting its head from the water, said, "You saved my life, Nouandoin. I am the king of the fishes, and if you require my help, call my name by the seashore, and I will come with these words." The fish king vanished beneath the water. A little later they came upon a bird, struggling vainly to escape from a net in which it was caught. "Cut the net and set the poor bird free," said the wise mare. So, upon Nouandoin doing so, the bird paused before it flew away and said, "I am the king of birds, Nouandoin. I will never forget the service you have rendered me. If you ever are in trouble and need my aid, you only have to call me, and I shall fly swiftly to help you." As they went on their way, Nouandoin's wonderful mare crossed mountains, forests, vast seas, and streams with a swiftness and case that was amazing. Soon they beheld the walls of Chateau of Golden Bell rising before them, and as they drew near they could hear a more confused and terrible noise coming from it, which shook Nouandoin's courage, and made him rather fearful of entering it. Near the door, a being of the most curious aspect was hung to a tree by a chain. This peculiar individual had as many horns on his body as there are in days of the year. Cut that unfortunate man down, said the mayor. Will you not give him his freedom? I'm too afraid to approach him, said Nwandwe, alarmed at the man's appearance. Do not fear, said the sagacious animal. He will not harm you in any way, nor manner. Nwandwe did so, and the stranger thanked him most gratefully, bidding him, as the others whom Udawan had rescued, if he ever required help, to call upon Griffskon, King of Demons, for that was his name, and he would be with him immediately. Enter the chateau boldly, without fear, said the mayor, and I will await you in the wood yonder. After the Princess Golden Bell has welcomed you, she will show you all the curiosities and marvels of a dwelling. Tell her you have a horse without an equal, which can dance most beautifully the dance of every land, so that your steed will perform for them for the diversion if she will come and behold it in the forest. Everything fell out as the mayor had said, and the princess was delighted and amused by the mayor's dancing. If you were to mount her, said Nwandwe, I vow she would dance even more wonderfully than before. The princess, after a moment's hesitation, did so. In an instant, the adventurous young youth was by her side, and the horse sped through the air, so that in a short space they found themselves flying over the sea. You've tricked me, cried the infuriated damsel, but do not imagine that you are at the end of your troubles. And she added viciously, you will have cause to lament more than once ere I wed the old King of France. They arrived promptly at Paris, where Nwandwe presented the lovely princess to the monarch, saying, Sire, I have brought to you the Princess Golden Bell, whom you desire to make your wife. Bear in mind, she was also known as a Goblin Princess as well. The king was dazed by the wondrous beauty of the princess, and was eager for the marriage to take place immediately. But this royal maiden would not hear of it, and declared, petulantly, she would not be wed until she had a ring which had left behind at her chateau, in a cabinet at which she lost the key. Summoning Nwandwe, the king charged him with the task of finding the ring. The unfortunate youth returned to his wise mare, feeling much cast down. Why, said the mare, a foolish one, do you not remember the king of birds whom you rescued? Call upon him. Mayhap he will aid you as he promised. With the return of hope, Nwandwe did as he was bid, and immediately the royal bird was with him, and asked him in what way he could help. Nwandwe explained his difficulty. The bird king summoned all his subjects, calling each one by name. They came, and none of them appeared to be small enough to enter the cabinet by way of the keyhole, which was the only means of entrance. The wren was decided to be the only bird with any chance of success, and he set out for the chateau. Eventually, with much difficulty, and the loss of a greater part of the feathers, the bird procured the ring, and flew it back to Paris with Nwandwe. Hastened to present the ring to the princess. Now, fair one, said the important king, why delay our wedding longer? Nay, said she, pouting discontentedly, there is one thing that I wish, and without it I will do nothing. What do you desire? You have only to speak, and it shall be brought. Well, transport my chateau, with all its contents, opposite to yours. What? Cried the king, aghast. Impossible. Well, then, it is just as impossible that I should marry you. Without my chateau, I shall not consent. For a second time the king gave Nwandwe what seemed an immeasurable task. Now indeed I am as good as lost, lamented the youth, as they came to the chateau, and he saw its massive walls towering above him. Call on Griffskon, king of the demons, to your assistance, suggested the wise mayor. With the aid of the demon king and subjects, Nwandwe's task was again accomplished, and he and his mare followed the demon army to Paris, where they arrived as soon as they did. In the morning, the people of Paris were struck dumb to see a wonderful palace, its golden towers flashing in the sun, rising opposite to the royal residence. We shall be married at last, shall we not? Asked the king. Yes, replied the princess, but how shall I enter my chateau and show you its wonders without a key? For I dropped it in the sea when Nuan and his horse carried me over it. Once more was the youth charged with the task, and through the aid of the Fish King was able to procure the key, which was cut from a single diamond. None of the fishes had seen it, but at last the eldest fish, who had not appeared when his name was pronounced, came forward and produced it from his mouth. With a glad heart, successfully, returned to Paris, and as the princess had now no more excuses to make, the day of the wedding was fixed, and the ceremony was celebrated, much splendour of course. To the astonishment of all, when the king had his betrothed entered the church, followed behind with his mare. At the conclusion of the ceremony, the mare's skin suddenly fell to the ground, disclosing a maiden of most beautiful, wonderful features. She was heavenly to look at. Smiling upon the bewildered Nuandoer, the damsel gave him a hand and said, Come with me to the Tartary, for the king of that land is my father, and there we shall be wed mid great rejoicing. Leaving the amazed king and the wedding guests, the pair quitted the church together. More might have been told of them, but Tartary is a far land, and no news of them, well, as of late years, never actually reached Britanny, but hopefully they did live a very happy life. We will have to assume that, of course. Now, there's a very important lesson in that tale, and I'd love to know what you think that lesson might be. It's a progressive lesson. It's shown throughout the whole tale. So from start to finish, really, it's one big lesson, all meaning the same thing. Thank you so much for listening me and joining me on this tale, and many blessings. Wisteria, energy, twister.